Hey guys, this morning we stand at the edge of a brand new dawn. The first light spills across your window, painting the sky in soft gold, and the air carries that crisp scent only mornings can bring. You breathe it in and wonder, what does God have prepared for you today? Could there be an unseen blessing waiting in the next conversation? Or a protection you won't even realize you needed? You probably won't survive this day without coffee. But thank the Lord, you don't have to survive it without His presence. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And in the comments, share what your morning looks like, whether it's quiet tea, bustling kids, or just you and the sunrise. Now take a deep breath, feel the morning light on your face, and let's begin today's prayer together. You notice how mornings have always fascinated believers. In ancient Israel, priests would rise at dawn to offer the first sacrifices, because light-breaking darkness symbolized God's new mercies. Interestingly, some early monks believed that if you missed morning prayers, you invited spiritual shadows to follow you the whole day. Historians still argue whether these strict routines helped or harmed faith. But one thing remains clear: morning has always been God's canvas of fresh beginnings. You stand now beneath the soft glow of morning, and Psalm 91 whispers its first promise: whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. Imagine that the world outside stirs with noise and demands, yet you are invited into God's shelter, like stepping beneath a vast, protective canopy no storm can penetrate. This isn't a fleeting visit. It's a dwelling, a choosing to stay in His presence as naturally as you breathe. You don't have to start this day alone. You begin already wrapped in divine safety. Long ago, Jewish families often built their homes with shaded courtyards where children played in peace. To them, shadows were more than darkness. They were relief, rest, and comfort from the desert sun. In the same way, God offers you shade, even when life blazes hot around you. A quirky note from history: Roman soldiers believed carrying a small charm would guard them from unseen spirits at dawn. Historians still argue whether these charms were superstition or cultural necessity. But believers today know true protection doesn't rest in tokens, but in the Almighty's shadow. As you breathe in this morning, feel His nearness settle over you like cool shade. Here, peace replaces fear, and closeness to God becomes your true rest. The morning brightens, and you realize how easily fear tries to slip into your thoughts. Will the day hold unexpected troubles? Will worries from yesterday return with sharper edges? Yet Psalm 91 answers, "You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day." In other words, the same God who kept you through the dark hours is the God who walks beside you now. His light is stronger than any shadow. In the ancient world, night was a time of real dread. Without streetlights, danger often came under cover of darkness. Wild animals, raiders, or illness that worsened in silence. Morning brought relief because people could finally see what was around them. A quirky little detail. Some medieval villages rang bells at dawn, not just to mark the hour, but to chase away spirits they believed had prowled through the night. Historians still argue whether such customs were superstition or symbolic faith. But either way, they reveal how deeply humans crave safety in morning's light. And here you are, God's own child, welcoming a new day where fear has no claim. Take comfort in the song of birds outside your window, the gentle hum of the world waking up, and remember, the Almighty Himself has declared you need not fear. As the morning breeze brushes across your face, you remember another promise of Psalm 91. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. Picture it. God's care is not distant or mechanical. It is tender, like a mother bird drawing her young close under her wings. The world may roar with headlines, bills, and burdens, but you are held close in the gentlest embrace of divine love. In ancient Israel, worshippers often brought birds as offerings at the temple. To them, birds were symbols of both fragility and freedom. And interestingly, some early rabbis taught that when David wrote of God's wings, he imagined the golden cherubim wings that stretched over the Ark of the Covenant, a holy reminder that God's nearness covered His people in mercy. A quirky note. In some cultures, people tied feathers above their doorways to catch blessings as they entered. Historians still argue whether such customs were harmless traditions or hidden idolatries, but one truth shines brighter. Your true covering is God Himself. So, as the sun climbs higher, pause and let yourself feel sheltered. No rush, no panic. Just the quiet assurance that, like a child tucked under wings, you are defended, protected, and deeply loved. The morning stretches further, and Psalm 91 declares, 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. The world can feel overwhelming headlines shout of disasters, economies tremble, and conflicts scatter across continents. Yet, while chaos may rage around you, God places a shield that keeps your heart steady and your steps secure. You are not abandoned to chance. You are marked by divine preservation. In history, this verse comforted soldiers heading into battle. Many World War I chaplains read Psalm 91 aloud before troops marched, believing it built courage. A quirky twist. In medieval Europe, some knights stitched tiny scrolls of this psalm into their armor, convinced the words themselves deflected arrows. Historians still argue whether it was superstition or symbolic faith. But what matters for you this morning is clear. Your true safety doesn't lie in steel, statistics, or strategies. It rests in the living God. Look outside again. Maybe you hear cars rushing or neighbors stirring with their own battles to face. Yet you, wrapped in God's promises, walk differently. You move not in fear of falling, but in confidence of standing, because the Almighty Himself guards your path today. As sunlight warms the earth a little more, you hear Psalm 91 whisper another assurance. He will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. Imagine it. You are never truly alone, for heaven's messengers are already on assignment. Angels go before you on the road, stand beside you in conversations, and hover quietly over your sleep. Their work is often invisible, but their presence is real, orchestrated by God Himself. In Scripture, angels frequently appeared at decisive moments, guiding Lot out of Sodom, strengthening Jesus in Gethsemane, or opening prison doors for Peter. A quirky note from medieval folklore. Some families left a chair empty at the breakfast table, believing an angel might visit unseen at dawn. Historians still argue whether these traditions distorted or deepened faith, but the underlying longing remains. People yearn to know they are not left to face life's dangers unguarded. So as you sip your morning drink, or listen to the hum of the world awakening, let this promise wrap around you. You are accompanied. Every step, every errand, every silent prayer has unseen guardians encircling it. And as sunlight falls across your path today, remember, God's command has already sent protection before you. By the time noon approaches, the brightness of the day can bring its own kind of weariness. Meetings pile up, traffic slows your steps, and worries try to sneak back in. Psalm 91 reminds you, you will not fear the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. The very hours when pressure builds are the moments when God's peace becomes your anchor. In the ancient Near East, midday was dreaded because heat could be unbearable, sickness often spread, and travelers risked exhaustion. The Israelites even had the word ketev, a spirit they believed struck at noon, draining strength. A quirky medieval practice emerged where some monasteries scheduled a special prayer walk right after lunch, designed to chase away what monks called the noonday demon, meaning discouragement. Historians still argue whether this demon was literal or simply a poetic name for fatigue and despair. And you know that feeling well, the slump, the doubts, the heaviness that creeps in when the day is only halfway done. Yet God says you need not fear it. Instead, you can let His presence be your cool breeze, your steady rhythm, your inner calm, even in the busiest moments. As the afternoon stretches on, Psalm 91 speaks boldly. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. The imagery is vivid wild beasts and venomous snakes, symbols of danger and temptation. Yet you are not portrayed as a victim. You are given authority, not by your own strength, but because God walks with you. Each step you take is marked by holy confidence, not fear. In ancient Israel, lions and serpents represented two extremes: overwhelming power and subtle, hidden threat. People feared both, yet the psalm declares they are under your feet. A quirky piece of history. In early Christian mosaics, believers often painted tiny images of snakes being crushed beneath sandals to remind themselves of this very promise. Historians still argue whether these were merely artistic flourishes or intentional declarations of victory. Either way, they carried a message of courage. So today, when temptation whispers, when discouragement coils like a serpent in your thoughts, or when pressures roar like lions, remember this: in Christ, you already stand victorious. Every step forward is a step over threats that cannot define or defeat you. The light of God shines on your path, and under that light, you overcome. As the late afternoon arrives, Psalm 91 reminds you of another truth. He will call on me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. Notice the wording. It does not say, trouble will never come. Instead, God promises his presence inside the trouble, his hand reaching through it, his love carrying you out of it stronger than before. In biblical times, calling on God's name was more than a prayer. It was a declaration of covenant. Ancient Israelites cried out during battles, believing victory was secured when God's name was invoked. A quirky story comes from the early desert fathers, monks who fled into the wilderness. They believed that simply whispering the name of Jesus out loud in the middle of fear could scatter every evil thought. Historians still argue whether these whispered prayers held mystical power or were simply acts of faith, but their endurance through hardship testified to something real. And so with you, whether today holds challenges at work, conflict in relationships, or burdens unseen, you are not left to face them alone. God doesn't watch from afar. He steps in, stands with you, and promises deliverance in his perfect time. As evening shadows begin to stretch, you remember how countless believers before you clung to Psalm 91 in their darkest hours. From ancient Israel's wanderings to modern days of war and upheaval, this psalm has been whispered like a lifeline. During the Black Plague in Europe, some communities recited it daily over their homes, trusting its words to shield them when medicine could not. Soldiers in World War II tucked copies of Psalm 91 into their pockets, calling it the soldier's psalm. There's even a quirky tale from the American frontier. Pioneers crossing dangerous lands would sometimes nail Psalm 91 verses onto their wagons, convinced the words kept arrows and sickness away. Historians still argue whether these practices were superstition or raw expressions of faith. Yet the common thread shines. Clear people have always reached for these promises when life felt fragile. And here you are, centuries later, with the same words available to you this very morning. The battles may look different now, emails instead of arrows, stress instead of sieges, but the heart behind them feels the same. Just like those who came before, you can whisper Psalm 91 into your day and know you stand in the stream of history's faith. Now pause and think about your own life, your personal battle today. Maybe it's not lions and arrows, but it could be stress from deadlines, the ache of a health concern, the weight of finances, or the loneliness that creeps in when no one is watching. Psalm 91 reaches into all of it, reminding you that God's promises were never meant just for ancient warriors. They are alive for you right now. In the early church, gatherings often began with the reading of Psalms because leaders knew people came carrying burdens. A quirky note: some communities even believed Psalm 91 was especially powerful against fevers, so it was read aloud at sickbeds like a healing balm. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic prayer or an early form of spiritual medicine. But either way, people sought its comfort. So think about where you need that comfort most today. Maybe it's in the quiet corner of your heart where fears still whisper. Maybe it's in the workplace where pressure tightens like a knot. Or maybe it's in the home where relationships feel fragile. Wherever your battle lies, the psalm declares that you are covered, guarded, and strengthened by a God who fights for you. As the day moves steadily forward, you're reminded that Psalm 91 is not about a quick visit to God's presence, but about choosing to dwell there. The verse says, "Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty." Dwelling means staying, making His presence your permanent address, not just your emergency shelter. Imagine waking each morning and stepping straight into His shadow as naturally as you brush your teeth. In Jewish tradition, worshipers often built small prayer corners in their homes, places where God's presence could be remembered daily. A quirky custom from the Middle Ages saw believers hanging little psalm scrolls above their beds, convinced the verses would guard their dreams. Historians still argue whether these practices were superstition or simple devotion, but the heart behind them is timeless. The longing to remain close to God at every moment. So, what about you? Today you're invited not to check in with God briefly, but to carry His nearness into your commute, your meals, your conversations. Dwelling means peace isn't limited to morning prayers. It stretches into every breath. Stay rooted in that shelter, and you'll discover rest that no noise of the world can steal. As the golden edges of late afternoon glow, let your prayers rise like the steady rhythm of your breathing. Psalm 91 can shape these prayers into anchors for your soul. Imagine 7 short prayers woven into your day like beads on a string, each carrying you closer to God's heart. The first is gratitude. Lord, thank you for being my shelter. The second is trust. I rest in your shadow, not my own strength. The third is courage. I will not fear what I cannot see. The fourth is intimacy. Cover me with your wings of love. The fifth is confidence. You have commanded angels to guard me. The sixth is authority. Through Christ, I trample fear and temptation. And the seventh is surrender. In trouble, I call and you answer. Early Christians often prayed in rhythms tied to the rising and setting of the sun. A quirky detail. Some communities believed prayers at dawn and dusk created a kind of spiritual shield around the hours in between. Historians still argue whether this was theology or folklore, but its beauty remains. Prayer transforms ordinary time into sacred time. So breathe slowly. Let each prayer pass through your lips, and feel your morning strength renewed again. The day is nearly complete, and Psalm 91 lifts you into a posture of victory. You are not merely surviving, you are overcoming. God has already placed strength in your steps and courage in your spirit. You walk as one who carries the promise, because he loves me, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. Your story is not marked by defeat, but by the steady assurance that Christ has secured your triumph. In the early church, Believers greeted each other with the phrase Christus Victor, meaning Christ is victorious, reminding one another that battles were already won in him. A quirky medieval tradition tells of villagers carving crosses into door frames during storms, believing this visible mark shouted victory over chaos. Historians still argue whether it was superstition or testimony, but the symbol pointed to faith in God's power. And now, as you walk into your own evening, you can claim the same confidence. Fear does not get the last word. Worry does not write your ending. Instead, you rise as one who overcomes not because the path is easy, but because the one who goes before you never fails. And now, the day settles into its gentle close, and Psalm 91 brings you into its final gift, peace that carries forward. You've walked through the imagery of wings, angels, shadows, and victory, and each promise now rests quietly within you. The psalm ends with God's vow, "With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation." This isn't just about years added. It's about life filled with meaning, joy, and the steady awareness of God's presence in every sunrise that follows. In Jewish tradition, evening prayers often closed with blessing children, speaking words of life into their tomorrow. A quirky practice in some medieval households was to mark the door with chalk at day's end, symbolizing protection through the night. Historians still argue whether such rituals were practical faith or fearful habit. But the essence remains. People long to carry God's shelter into tomorrow. So tonight, you rest not in uncertainty, but in certainty. The same God who guarded you this morning walks with you into the quiet hours. Your heart can breathe deeply, knowing His promises extend beyond this single day, weaving into all the days to come, until peace becomes the rhythm of your life. And so, beloved, let this day fade gently, like the soft glow of sunset stretching across the horizon. Your heart slows, your breath steadies, and the presence of God settles over you like a warm blanket. You are not left to fight, strive, or fear. The Lord Himself carries you into rest. Tomorrow will dawn again with new mercies, and you will awaken already sheltered in His love. Walk with courage, sleep in peace, and rise with joy. For the Lord is your refuge, your fortress, and your everlasting song.